Yo, what up, Street Dogs? Air Kim. Alright, so the thought. Why art? So, why art? Why is art important? And stuff like that. So, the first thing is, I want to say, essentially, you could call almost anything art. So, if you think about the ancient Greek, the notion of art was like more techne, T-E-K-H-N-E, which like same as technique or technical, whatever. And so the notion of art wasn't like, some dude who puts paint on a wall and looks all artsy, whatever. The first notion of being an artist or being technical was kind of more of an approach and a technique. So even like Horace, who wrote his book on the art of poetry, to Pisos, he says this is just the technique of good poetry. So art could, like, rather than calling things art, we should probably just maybe call it technique. So maybe like, what's the best technique to playing music, to writing, to talking, to rhetoric, to oratory skills, to rapping, to making photos, etc., etc. Now, I think this is kind of an interesting notion because, if you make something or you do anything, you're essentially an artist in your own given domain. So if you write academic papers, you're an artist for that. If you make videos, you do podcasts, you're an artist. So essentially, every child is born an artist. And the question is, how do we remain artists as we get older? So let's just kind of get that out of the way. So everyone's an artist, and everything is art, and everything is equally legitimate. So I'm more interested in why is art important and why pursue it. So for the most part, art is kind of useless in terms of the utilitarian sense. I mean, for the most part, art isn't gonna help you, eat food. I mean, like the basic notions to human survival, right? Don't starve to death, don't freeze to death, and don't die of thirst. Beyond that, like, you don't really need anything for like physiological, biological survival for us humans to not die. So the goal is for us to not die. Then beyond that, everything could be considered superfluous or art. And so I think for me, so I have some theories. So let me just kind of turbo them out to you. So one of them is, I think humans, we have this innate desire to exert our will upon external reality, on trees, natures, humans, plants, whatever. And we get great joy to see the effect of our pursuits or whatever being impacted. So we like to see cause and effect and impact. There's maybe some sort of primordial joy that we get, that like we hit something, we punch something, and then something happens. And so I think initially this is why I liked computers, that you click a few stuff and then something happens on a screen. That's quite cool and optimistic as a child. And so when you're making art, when you're making anything, it's kind of cool to see the before and after, or the making of, or the progress. So maybe from a pure physics perspective, we get this great joy of just seeing something change. We like to see change, essentially. We like to see change, growth, and whatever. Now, the funny thing about change, growth, and stuff like that, it's very subjective, where sometimes when you add stuff, it's better, and sometimes when you get rid of stuff, it's better. So this is where numbers could be quite confusing, because let's say your money goes up, obviously that feels good, that looks good, but if your body fat goes up, that's a bad thing. And then also it's highly specific to gender too, right? So for example, let's say you're a guy and trying to get swole. If you see your weight go up, you're probably going to be very happy because you think that you're becoming stronger, more powerful. But if you're a woman who wants to, look kind of more like, supermodel status, then if you step on the scale and you see your weight go up, that actually might make you feel a little bit depressed, because you feel like you're going progress in the wrong direction. Even for me, like, basic notions with social media. So generally with social media, you see your follower count or your like count or your view count, whatever, go up, that makes you happier, and if you see it go down, that makes you depressed. But it's tricky because, once again, these numbers don't really tell you anything meaningful. So for the most part, the numbers don't lie, but then they just don't tell you anything useful. So for example, let's say I had 50,000 followers and then I lose 4,900 followers and I only got 100 followers left. But let's say each of those 100 followers, those 100 people follow me, is like Jay-Z, Kanye, Elon Musk, and so forth. Then even having 3 followers who are very influential is worth a quadrillion times more than having, 100 like rando people following me. So that's the thing, that we can't really trust these numbers, where like the numbers don't lie, but they don't tell us anything truly meaningful or substantive, I suppose. So with art, at least I know for myself, I get a great joy of just creating stuff, of making stuff. And I looked into a little bit to the etymology of this, and it looks like an artist or a creator is just somebody who likes to make stuff. Like, very, very simply put, if you like to make stuff, then you're an artist, and that's that. And all of us are born, we're thrust into this world without our own permission. So the question is, now that we know we're alive, what are we to do? And so, so the question is like, what do you want to make? What do you want to create? What do you want to change? And even as an artist, it's kind of funny because there's so many different ways to be an artist. Like, there are ways to destroy things, which is very creative. So for example, I was in New Orleans recently, and there's this huge skyscraper that needs to be taken down. But unfortunately, you can't just put 1,000, pounds of dynamite and blow the whole thing up. There's actually an art to it. There's a certain technique to it. And so it takes great skill, elegance, and finesse to figure out how to demolish a skyscraper. Similarly, if you think about like Rodin, or Auguste Rodin, I think his name is, right? The sculptor, the thinking dude. It's like, how can you take marble or iron or bronze, whatever, and then you could sculpt it to become what it is? Or like maybe in the context of, let's say you're, a sculptor, you take a piece of wood and then you're essentially chipping away, or you're kind of carving away the excess in order to make it a beautiful artworks. So that's interesting. Also, as a photographer, essentially what we do, we're filtering reality, is, you go out into the embodied world, you go into embodied reality, and you're essentially like a visual surgeon that you kind of sculpt and sculpt. Like you take that scene that you find interesting. So like, let's say I'm looking at this thing, right? And there's so many things for me to photograph. It's like, what do I decide to photograph? What do I not decide to photograph? And then you essentially make a mental visual box of like, okay, I want to photograph that, or I want to photograph that, or I want to photograph that. So just realize that you, as a photographer, you're kind of like a visual surgeon, and this is kind of an interesting activity for you to pursue. So going back to why make art. So to make art, it's just kind of fun. Like it's joyful, it's interesting, and you also have the chance to uplift and empower other people. And it seems like, at least in today's world, we're not so martial anymore. We're not we're not like the heroes of the Iliad. We're not all like with swords and spears and killing each other, like, for the most part, I think. So most of us are private citizens, we work dutifully, we pay our taxes, whatever. And so the question comes then is, what is you to do with your life? And I think that maybe we should almost treat our creating art kind of like a battle or a war. It's like a metaphorical war, and essentially it's discovering new truths about yourself, it's about sharing them with others, and it's about there's kind of expressing or outpressing whatever is inside your soul to embodied reality. So I guess the point of art is to assert your soul onto reality.